the first thing chronic politics watchers would have noticed this morning, that is Friday morning this week, was a tweet from UP Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath. And what did the tweet say? Let me read it for you in Hindi. It said, वे जिन्ना के उपासक हैं, हम सरदार पटेल के पुजारी हैं. उनको पाकिस्तान प्यारा है, हम माँ भारती पर जान न्यौछावर करते हैं. So how do you translate this? Now a lot of these things lose flavor when you translate, but let me do my best effort transliteration, which is they are worshippers of Jinnah, we pray to Sardar Patel, they adore Pakistan, we love Mother India and will even sacrifice our lives for it. Okay, it is easy to express abhorrence for this statement or endorse it if you so wish. There are two sides. We are a very polarized society right now. Or you can call it a communal dog whistle, which it is. But a student of politics would look deeper. The lazy part is to merely express abhorrence or endorsement. If you translate it into politics, you might discover something more profound. So what is the political message we see here? Now, stirrings in the Hindi heartland, generally 2004 onwards, had given us the first indication of the rise of an aspirational India. That this was no longer an India frozen in the past, trying to get revenge for injustices of the past. This was now moving forward optimistically. The change in Bihar beginning in 2005, that year it took two elections, but Lalu Yadav was defeated by Nitish Kumar comprehensively after 15 years. And he has ruled since then. Nitish Kumar has ruled since then. Now, people of Bihar then, overwhelmingly young, had spoken. They were no longer willing to vote based on their grievances of the past. They now had expectations from Nitish for the future. The rival political messages underlined to us the tussle. Lalu said in his campaign, the battle for social justice has resumed. तो अपनी लाठी को तेल पिला लो, which means season your sticks or lathis with oil because you have to fight again against upper castes for social justice. Nitish, on the other hand, was saying, no, you don't get justice by seasoning your lathis in oil. You get justice through education, through jobs, through learning English language. So his exact counter to लाठी को तेल पिला लो was लाठी को तेल नहीं पिलाओ, अब अपनी कलम को स्याही भरो. That means fill ink in your pens. So a lot of the pundits laughed at him. He had to be nuts, they said, to be arguing the case for pen is mightier than lathi in caste-ridden, hopeless, desperate Bihar. He won a famous victory though and has been in power since. There was a new stirring of change that this indicated in the heartland. By 2009, when UPA returned to power with much larger numbers than in 2004, we were confident enough to hail the rise of an aspirational India. We said the UPA has given so many years of growth. Maybe some of it was also credit Vajpayee government before that, but the fact is that India had so much growth. People were optimistic, aspirational, and they were now voting for the future, not voting for grievances of the past. Politics of grievance, we then said, had now been replaced by politics of aspiration. What else could a predominantly young India ask their gods for? Growth had been brilliant in the preceding years, and India was poised to encash its demographic dividend, being among the youngest large populations in the world. This was a sentiment that spoke out in the majority given to Narendra Modi in 2014 as well. The young Indians still riding a wave of optimism and bitter with UPA too for its letdown, bought into Narendra Modi's promise of growth, jobs, prosperity. They weren't just voting against Pakistan or a new republic where Muslims were to be quote-unquote others and again quote-unquote allowed to live if only knew their place. That is not what they were voting for. Now, year on year since then, we have gone backwards into our angry past. The youth in the same Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, where we had seen the yearning of aspiration, are now frustrated, furious, burning government property, even a train, which doesn't happen often these days, are thrashed by the police in their hostel in Allahabad University in the middle of an election campaign. And why they would be angry? It takes us a bit of effort to understand what is the issue with this exotic sounding RRB-NTPC exam. So RRB stands for Railway Recruitment Board, and NTPC is not National Thermal Power Corporation. It is non-technical popular category. See, non non-technical popular categories. Just how popular? Do the math. The railways have 7 lakh vacancies in these categories, presumably those with ordinary education can apply because these are non-technical. For each job, 354 have applied, which means for each one that wins, 353 will be the loser. Who wouldn't be furious with odds like these? And this is not even for all India services under UPSC. This is essentially for clerical or sub-clerical jobs, non-technical you see, and popular. Similarly, in Uttar Pradesh, there are mass protests over what is called as UPTET, that is Uttar Pradesh Teachers Entrance Test Exams. Again, odds aren't much better. Lots of applicants for too few jobs. They're a poor and backward state with very poor record on educational literacy also. Like Uttar Pradesh is carrying so many vacancies in its schools for teachers until its election weeks is a different story altogether. We'll talk about that at some other point. Now, the grievances of the protesters also tell us the story, the real story. One of these grievances is that the examiners or the selection system has given precedence or weightage to people with higher qualifications. It means that once you lay down a minimum qualification, everybody should be treated the same. So if you say qualification is graduation, then if you start giving precedence to those who are postgraduate or PhD or MPhil, then the graduates get wasted out. And they are saying that that is unfair. Let everybody have the same chance because a lot of these applicants are very highly qualified. Now, if it still confuses you, please put out a call for just 5 jobs. Even for office helpers or security guards, you might get 354 applications for each one. And most with qualifications higher than you asked for. You might get engineers, MBAs, master's degrees, even sometimes doctorates. At ThePrint, we asked for applications for our editing desk on social media. It was probably what would be called a whack-a-mole error. But it was also an eye-opener. For the 3 or 4 positions a tiny newsroom like ours needed to fill, we received almost 1,000 applications. And you know what? It still wasn't such a challenge to make a shortlist because most are much too overqualified and doubly sad to say too old for the job. That tells us the story of massive, deep and chronic unemployment and most importantly, unemployability of these crores of young people with degree and unemployability in any job other than a non-technical popular category in the railways or some such place in the government. This is a demographic nightmare. This is not a demographic dividend. How do you counter this anger? Especially if you are the incumbent seeking re-election as Yogi Adityanath is in Uttar Pradesh. Call for his choice between Jinnah and Sardar Patel. Simple. They died, both of them died before more than 95% of Uttar Pradesh's voters were even born. They died 70 years ago or 70 years plus ago. So most voters were not even born. 95% of UP's voters were not even born then. So this is the new version. This is the 2022 version of Give Them Cake. The interesting thing is, while that remark bombed for one who uttered it, originally the French Queen, it might just work here in India. Here is how the proposition is set. We know you are jobless, hopeless. But which is how you, your parents and grandparents have been for 70 years. And why have they been so? Because they all made lousy political choices. Your generation now has to rectify it. I may not be able to give you employment or riches right now, but can't you forget that for a while? Desh aur dharam ke liye, for faith and your country. Are you a nationalist? Are you a true Hindu? That is how this question now is, this proposition is now structured. It is quite attractive. The fate of nations and civilizations, however, is not determined by who wins an election or two. It's defined by what its people, especially its young people, are thinking, dreaming. Aspirations for the future, or are they mourning over the past? Yogi has confected a heady cocktail garnished with echoes of Thok Do, right, and counterculture and served under saffron lights. Of course, data then comes free on your smartphones, cheap smartphones, to spice up this deadly brew. Even if he succeeds, the reality on the ground will not change. Go driving around India's small towns, villages, and less prosperous areas in your metros, especially in the afternoons. You can't miss clumps of young people whiling away time at chai and cigarette or pan shops or just on the roadside, mostly leaning on the odd motorcycle. They have nothing to do. Mostly they aren't doing anything. They are not even playing cards or carom. In fact, increasingly now you find they are not even talking with each other. What are they doing? They're just looking at their mobile phones. Why? Because mobile phones come with free data. Now, cricketer Virender Sehwag had the prescience to pick up this trend earlier than most, earlier definitely than any of us journalists, as he might have done with the swing or flight of what was bowled at him the moment the ball left the bowler's hand. Some years ago, he had tweeted, "Pehle ka naujawan aata khata tha, ab ka naujawan data khata hai," which means the youth of the past ate atta, which is wheat flour. The youth of today makes do with data, right? This is the only antidote available to tens of crores today in lieu of jobs, income, self-esteem. It brings them entertainment, propaganda, pornography, mythology, most importantly, time pass. It's the new cake, and they are eating it for now. But at some point soon, when this mass frustration breaks the dam, India will have hell to pay. Then it won't matter so much who won this election or that, or who won which election. India's unemployed and unemployed masses are now the biggest risk to our national stability, security, and social cohesion.